Hello and welcome to Weekend One. I'm Masako Rathafa. It's good to have you with us. Now, Weekend One is where we give you a roundup of this week's top stories and some of the best interviews we've done here on eNCA that you might have missed. This week's top stories: chemical poisoning has been identified as the cause of death in the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy. Eskom plunges the country into stage 4 and 6 power cuts. The Constitutional Court rules that Communications Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni acted unlawfully when setting the date for the analog switch-off. The tragic death of 21 teenagers at Enyobeni Tavern in Scenery Park has sent shockwaves across the world. eNCA senior reporter Aviwe Mtila and cameraman Nceba Nhlanganiso have been on the ground in East London since the tragedy unfolded last weekend.
We can't accept it. We are one of the poorest families. And as we are standing here right now, we need justice because we don't know what happened. We were just called just to attend to the scene, and now we're only here to identify the body. And the body is still here. We're taking the child to Algov because of the mayor's offer, but we need justice. We need to know what happened to the child.
What are they telling you, Mama? Are you getting any answers?
At the moment, there are no answers. They said autopsy will be sent to the lab to find out what happened. But by the look of the child, she's got no visible injuries.
Undoyika ba owami ngakanti lapha and kuthiwa kuhamba ezi-age zabo apho zandize apha. Undoyika xa ningamfumaniyo, otherwise animazi noba ulapha na okanye khangeze na, andikho sure.
Abantwana bakho zithini age zabo?
18 and 17.
Bobabini sebefikile ekhaya?
Abakafiki.
Awukho sure?
Andikho sure. But uba bebefikile inkosikazi ngesayinifowunela. That means abakafiki.
The next day, eNCA learned that the teens died from chemical poisoning, but a toxicology report will let us know exactly what chemicals killed the teenagers.
Chemical poisoning is what led to the deaths of the 21 teenagers at Enyobeni Tavern in Scenery Park in East London. This was revealed to eNCA by experts close to the investigations that says that upon the bodies being taken from Enyobeni Tavern to Woodbrook Mortuary, it was discovered there that all the abnormalities in the deceased were all consistent. Each and every one of the dead teenagers had similar signs of poison that was in them. The report was completed and finalized, a post-mortem in East London, then taken by the South African Police Service at around noon on Monday, taken to Cape Town at the toxicology lab over there. Now what's currently happening is that the toxicologists over there are trying to determine the exact toxin that led to the teenagers that passed away at Enyobeni Tavern. At this stage, the families of the deceased still haven't been alerted to exactly what caused the death of their young teenagers.
The minister also has a task team that has come down to look into the investigation. So there are numerous investigations that have been done by both sides. Yes, health has concluded its matter in terms of the postmortems, but we need to have a conclusive report from both sides and what the postmortems are saying. Until that is done, we can't actually communicate with the families because then it will be, you know, sometimes we can't now because it's a matter that is before SAP, so we have to wait for that matter to be concluded.
Hundreds of youth, not only from Scenery Park but surrounding communities, marched through the streets of Scenery Park, headed for Enyobeni Tavern to remember their friends. What came out, though, is what might have happened on the day of the fatal deaths.
Kwakumnandi bhuti kunormal njengezinye indawo kwamnandi but into I think iqale pha ekuseni ngo1 kwaqala kwacima isibane sacime 4 times esasibane kwacinywa umcuko kwabe kugoduka xa sisehla kwezazitezi zehla pha yaqala ke kula chaos kwashushu kwanzima uphefumula kwashushu kwanzima uphefumula kutshisa apha sempumlweni kule ndawo apha empumlweni abanye babona nabesiwa abakwazi uphefumla, bayanyathelwa kuvalwe nomnyango ke ngoku asikwazi uphuma ngenxa yoba kuvalwe umnyango. Mna babhuti ndasinda njani andiyazi because nam ndandisithi ndiyasweleka ngokuya but andiyazi uba ndancedwa bafana bayithu uba bandibona njani uba ndiyasweleka andiyazi.
A mass funeral will be held for the 21 teenagers on the Wednesday of the 6th of July. Aviwem Tila, Scenery Park, East London.
Eskom woes continue to grow. The power utility has announced fluctuations between stage 4 and 6 blackouts, meaning South Africans find themselves without electricity for at least 6 hours a day. The loss of further generating capacity has been worsened by wildcat strikes at its power plants. Lindoguhle Xulu has the story.
The city of Johannesburg says achieving a consistent power supply for residents and businesses will mean being independent from Eskom. The power utility has for years faced issues that have resulted to load shedding. Johannesburg Mayor Mpho Phalatse says a team led by MMC for Environment and Infrastructure Michael San is on a benchmark visit to the Western Cape to check how it can start tapping into independent power producers for an alternative source of electricity.
The idea is to learn from the city of Cape Town to fast track us as we also want to start introducing IPPs into our energy mix. And as you know, one of the resolutions again was that we're going to send out a request for proposals and start bringing in independent power producers, small-scale energy generators, so they can help us meet our energy needs.
Redefine Properties Group says innovation should be part of the modern-day planning phase of starting businesses. Opening a new shopping complex, CEO Leon Koch announced that this shopping complex has been designed to survive under the current challenges faced by the country, including power supply.
It's not necessarily COVID related, it's more the economy. The issues around Eskom is well documented, and as we experienced today and the rest of this week under level 6 and such like. That's why initiatives such as this, as we've got here, as you rightly mentioned, 40% of our electricity at this centre will be generated from solar PV. So that's something that we try to encourage throughout our portfolio, not just from being able to mitigate some of the challenges that Eskom pose, but also from a sustainability point of view. It's the right thing to do. We're blessed in the country with ample sunlight. So in our mind, the more we can do of this, the better for everyone.
The recent spate of load shedding has also left Eskom's customers asking more questions of the utility. This includes customers who say they've had no electricity for months. They've asked for some consideration and compassion.
From last year, October, 28th of October. So, kuzokube manje nje. Akuna nkazululo. Eskom ayenzayo. Akuna move.
Abanye abantu bashonayo ngoba bafanele ukuthi amakhaza abaphetha ukho ukuthi sizobayenza kanjani.
Eskom has announced that stage 6 is to be implemented on Wednesday between 4 to 10 p.m. This will be reduced to stage 4 until midnight on Thursday. Lindoguhle Xulu, Johannesburg.
Stay tuned to Weekend One here on eNCA. When we return, we'll showcase some of the best interviews on the channel. Welcome back to Weekend One. In this part of the show, we highlight some of the big interviews and hot button discussions that have had viewers glued to their screens. The Constitutional Court this week ruled that Communications Minister Khumbuzo Ntshavheni acted unlawfully by setting an analog switch-off date of the 31st of March this year. This is the judgment of Justice Nonkosi Mhlantla in the Constitutional Court, who says the minister should have given notice to industry stakeholders in order to canvass their views.
Digital migration policy discussions must include an opportunity where affected parties are given notice and afforded an opportunity to make representations on the analog switch-off date. Following the requirements of Albert then, it was not procedurally rational for the minister to set the analog switch-off date without notice to the industry and affected parties like MMA and SOS to obtain their views on the matter. Therefore, her decision to determine the analog switch-off date was unlawful.
ETV has welcomed the ruling, saying it's not standing in the way of the digital migration, but believes it must be done procedurally fair and with all processes followed.
At ETV, we've never stood in the way of digital migration. We always have believed that the digital migration process is something that needs to happen, and it should happen, but we were always of the view that it needed to happen procedurally fairly, and it needed to follow a process that was fair to all parties. And one of the things that the court actually found today was that the consultation process that the minister had embarked on was not enough. She didn't sufficiently consult with all stakeholders, and particularly with some stakeholders like Media Monitoring Africa and SOS, who had joined ETV as party to this appeal in the court. And we are not standing in the way of digital migration. We do believe that it's going to happen. It's important that it happens for the country, but we do believe that it needs to happen in a way that is fair for everybody, and particularly to ensure that people are not cut off from television, and particularly for free-to-air television, because this is the means by which many people receive information and news. And to have a television blackout would be a huge infringement of their rights. And the court has seen that today.
City Power is buckling under the strain of rolling power cuts. In a series of tweets, the Johannesburg power supplier says Stage 4 is damaging the region's grid. It says the system is not designed to be switched on and off repeatedly. Sally Burdett spoke to City Power's Isaac Mangena about this.
I think desperation, that's exactly where it is at this moment for us at City Power, because of the pressures that we're actually feeling due to this load shedding. I'm talking about from Stage 2, Stage 4, now we're at Stage 6, and you can imagine what that it means for us. It means more problems for City Power, but it also means more problems by extension for our customers, because of it means that they will have to basically bear with us as we struggle to basically deal with some of the backlogs that we already had in Stage 4, plus the inclement weather that we are currently in. The demand of electricity is very high, and also it means that we will have to switch them off. Stage 6 means that we will have to switch them off at least 3 to 4 times a day, which really, if you are running a small business, it might mean that you have to close. If you're working from home due to the new arrangements past COVID-19, it also means you may not be able to basically keep up with being at home when electricity goes on and off every 2 hours.
And is load shedding leading directly to more fault reporting?
Yes, indeed. With load shedding, there are a lot of things that are happening in the background, especially in terms of the network, but also even in terms of our operations. So in terms of the network, you've got a situation where we are dealing with rampant cable theft. This means that we will keep on cutting and joining cables to ensure that we keep the lights going. So with those multiple joints that we are putting in, when there is load shedding, the ons and offs that are happening, the switching on, when it happens, it looks for that, weakened spots within the cable, and that's when it pops, and that's where the problems are. But we also have a situation where most of our mini substations and transformers are actually blowing up because of this load shedding that is happening. But it also affects customers. When we switch on electricity, inrush current can just blow your micro ovens, your fridges, and your TVs, and so forth. So there's a lot that basically is going on. I'm talking about mechanical infrastructure here, but it's also taking a strain on human resources.
The recent final state capture report has found that the rot at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa runs a lot deeper than initially thought. eNCA anchor Dan Moyane spoke to the former public protector, Professor Thulima Donsela, about her views on this.
Maybe it might be a bitter pill to swallow. We just need an amnesty for people who've been in corruption, but on certain conditions. I see you're smiling as I'm asking this question. What are your thoughts about it? Do we need an amnesty for state capture, people who are involved in state capture?
Absolutely. And I've heard this from several people. I remember meeting a fellow from Harvard at the time who used to be a mayor of Bogota. And he was very keen on this idea of a carrot and stick approach to corruption. Because as I've said, Dan, you're dealing with a syndicate. And therefore, if you're targeting one person, you're not going to get a lot of the pieces of the puzzle. And those who are corrupt that you're targeting would still have a tight grip on people inside of the system, making them continue to be corrupt on their behalf, but also threatening them in the event they don't do as being asked. So the only way you can cut the tentacles of the monster that is corruption is make sure that everyone who's been involved in the syndicate is accounted for, and those who are small role players are given some form of amnesty. It's something I've been asking for, and then people thought, oh, maybe my friends are implicated. No, I'm not asking for amnesty for big guys. I'm asking for amnesty for the finance clerk, the HR clerk, the supply chain management junior managers, even senior managers, but the ordinary foot soldiers. I don't think we're going to lose much if we give amnesty to the foot soldiers of corruption. It also gives us an opportunity to break the syndicate. In Germany, they don't allow people who work in finance and supply chain management to stay in the same place for too long, because then that's how these syndicates form and pursue their business.
Stay tuned to Weekend One. We'll be keeping you abreast of the stories that made headlines over the past week. Welcome back to Weekend One, your quick fix of the top news stories you need to know. Now, syndicates continue to target steel and copper from railway lines. 7 people were recently convicted after they had removed rail material worth more than R1 million in KZN. eNCA senior reporter Desin Thathia has more.
Theft and vandalism continues to compromise the rail network in KwaZulu-Natal, like in other parts of the country. In Durban and its surrounds, it's an ongoing battle, but not just when it comes to passenger trains, but also when it comes to the movement of goods. Fortunately, there was some good news recently where 7 suspects believed to be linked to a syndicate were convicted for their crimes. I'm now going to bring in a security specialist, Shaheen Suleiman, Magma Security and Investigations. Shaheen, you led the team that was behind the arrest and the investigation of that particular syndicate that I'm talking about. Just take me through some of the details of that case.
Okay, we received information that there was a syndicate operating in the Richmond area, not only railway track lines, but also copper theft and tower batteries as well. So we then put investigators together, and we started to investigate the syndicate, and we managed to arrest 7 suspects, and we recovered 3 vehicles, blow torches, and all the tracks that was cut at the railway line.
What is the value of the steel that they'd stolen?
The value, it was about 1.2 million.
Shaheen, beyond just this particular case, I mean, the vandalism and theft of infrastructure is an ongoing issue, something that you've been working quite closely with and trying to crack and try to make arrests. Just talk to me about how prevalent it is.
It's bad. The syndicates, it's getting so desperate because it's actually organized crime, but it's the lower people who are doing this type of stuff, for this type of crime, just for a daily living. But the organized crime, the kingpin, is sitting on the top. So what basically happens is the guy who does the stealing just steals for a day of living. The stuff then gets to a scrapyard. The scrapyard then containers it and sends it overseas.
How close are we to getting to those kingpins? I mean, and what's being done on the ground by yourselves and others to ensure that this comes to a stop?
Okay, the president has put a team together with SAPS. There is a special task team to investigate the infrastructure cases and that, and it is being set up, and we've had meetings with SAPS and that there, and I'm quite confident we are going to get somewhere.
Thank you very much for your time, Shaheen Suleiman with Magma Security and Investigations. Hopefully that task team will be able to put a stop to this ongoing issue that is severely affecting all rail networks in the province. I'm Desin Thathia in Richmond, KwaZulu-Natal.
With the latest bout of power cuts affecting all and sundry, Some Cape Town residents are calling on authorities to create alternative sources of energy. This as Eskom's rolling blackouts impact security in areas like Langa. eNCA's Nobesuthu Hejana has been following the story.
We need to work with gas because this thing of load shedding is affecting a lot of residents here in Langa, especially the late time, because during the day it's not everything that people are using electricity, but evening time when people need to cook.
I leave in the morning about 5:15. I get home like almost 7 o'clock. So they come times and I can't even charge my phone and I can't do what I want to do.
Cape Townians say they've had enough of the continuous power outages. They want the city authorities to completely take over energy supply so that all city residents can have some sort of relief over Eskom's power cuts.
We've got a lot of elderly residents who uses machines to breathe, so that those machines doesn't work when the power is out. So it's life and death situations that we're sitting with, and nobody cares.
Safety patrollers in Langa say they can barely manage to keep criminals away when it's dark.
Some other members of the communities, they have experienced the burglaries in their house during the load shedding hours, and also we're also experiencing the car hijackings in the area.
And businesses are struggling to make an income.
Because of the load shedding, we have to sit down for like 4 hours, 6 hours, and the other hours we are just cruising through because people are turning around because of the long period of waiting.
And we lost a lot of customers, and you know, as a small business, we depend on this. We pay rent on this. Our students going to school because of this. So we pay the rent here, we pay the rent where we are staying.
The city of Cape Town says it intends to keep its customers on lower stages, as it's also making use of the Steenbras hydroelectric plant for energy supply. Nobesuthu Hejana, Cape Town.
Political infighting and poor governance within the Mangaung Metro have come at a great cost to the city and its residents. The latest report by the Auditor General indicates that National Treasury withheld 429 million rand meant for service delivery projects in that municipality. Moloko Moloto filed this report.
Because of underspending that resulted from delays in completing grant-funded projects, Mangaung Metro lost nearly R500 million to the fiscus. According to the Auditor General, this placed a further strain on the Metro's financial health and a negative impact on service delivery. The DA's Johan Pretorius says this isn't surprising.
It's really bad. I think as a councillor, and we had elections last year, we really thought that residents will actually speak at the ballot box and vote for the party that they want to take over. Unfortunately, the ANC still had 51 seats after the elections, and I think there's a lot of faction fights in the ANC as well, and that's causing a lot of instability. As a councillor, we are very worried about what's going on in Mangaung, and I mean the budget, it took the third time to pass.
In April, Cabinet placed the Metro under national administration 2 years after a provincial intervention which failed to turn the situation around. Mayor Mxolisi Siyonzana admits the conditional grant fund was forfeited during the 2020-2021 financial year, but he claims the city has since turned over a new leaf.
At the time, we lost around 400 million because we were not spending the money which was allocated to us. But there are changes now. Between 2021 to 2022 financial year, national government gave us more than 450 million. To be precise, 470 million.
But even while there's a new council following the November 2021 local government elections, which the ANC in Mangaung won by a slender majority, divisions are already showing among councillors of the governing party. This was seen when some ANC councillors repeatedly voted against the adoption of budget for the financial year that's starting on Friday, forcing council to only succeed on the third meeting and only with the help of smaller opposition parties. With the Auditor General having challenged councils in failing municipalities such as Mangaung to provide leadership, it appears Siyonzana and his colleagues in the City of Roses have their work cut out for them. Molokwe Moloto, Bloemfontein, Free State.
And that's a wrap from myself and the Weekend One team. Thank you for watching. Stay warm and stay safe.